For many years now, Russ and Craig have had many wide-ranging conversations with folks from all over the gaming world. This is one of those conversations.
D6G, the Lost Chapter.
And so I was like walking around in the 40K hall.
Yeah.
And you figure from the last time we talked to John, of course, that you wouldn't see him in the 40K hall, right?
No, that's what I thought.
And then there he is, and he's got his little judge shirt on, and oh my God, there he is!
There he is now. Look,
John, what are you doing in
John? You should
Donuts?
really wash the judge shirt. It's been like 2 weeks since Adepticon.
That's always
well, it's a good thing they like my judge shirt here at Dunkin' Donuts, so they give me free donuts when I wear my judge shirt.
I was wondering. That's awesome. Well, welcome, John.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So, I just saw John like a week ago.
I know. It's good to see you, John. I'm really sorry I missed you at Adepticon. So what is your favorite donut here at Dunkin' Donuts?
You ask me every time.
I do.
My favorite donut is not sold at Dunkin' Donuts, so it's very depressing.
It is depressing. Well, how about
That's
a coffee?
okay, John. Tonight I don't have. I smuggled food in myself tonight.
I like the buttermilk bar, which is not apparently sold in Dunkin' Donuts.
It's also not sold in New England. I don't know what that is, but we talked about that before.
Sounds
can I buy you a coffee? Because I'm guessing you've been putting in a lot of late nights and long days working on this new project you've been working on.
Sure, I will take a coffee.
There you go. So this project.
Now that the role playing is out of the way.
So this project John's been working on, is this new game that he now we're not at liberty at this point to talk about the game. In the main show coming shortly after this Lost Chapter, we will talk in grueling detail about all the mechanics and the models and all the cool things that are making this new game cool. But we wanted to ask John, since we got him here at Dunkin' Donuts, what was the process of getting into? Why did you even do this? And
right. Well, you start as like the guy.
Yeah.
About like the rules guru of 40K around the world for years. And now you emerge all of a sudden as, hey, got a game of my own.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say, there's different people involved in making the game, and I think probably everybody had their own different reason for wanting to get on board and make a game. But I think everybody ultimately has an idea that they have one great game idea.
It's like the Great American Novel. Everybody's got one good war game in him somewhere.
I think so. For me, I think I can say that when Warhammer 40K went from 5th edition to 6th edition, and it sort of, in my mind, changed from up until 6th edition, it felt like 40K was moving towards sort of like a squad-based game. It was getting more and more streamlined. You didn't really have to worry about where the guys in the unit were and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden in 6th edition, it sort of shifted back to closer to 2nd edition, where you suddenly had to worry about where the models were. And when that happened, I just kind of like started to get to me that it's a fine game, and I know a lot of people like that style of killing the closest model to where you're shooting, and I have no problem with that. But it's just not the game that I personally wanted. And as soon as you get that in your mind, like, this is not what I wanted, and it's not going in that direction anymore, it's going the opposite direction, then you start thinking about, well, if I were to change 40K or do something like that, what would I do? And so you start thinking about, at first, maybe tinkering with the system and doing just for fun. And then, maybe along the way, other people are like, well, why don't we create something new? And then as soon as you start on and have that idea and you say, well, you've got a blank slate, now you kind of have to throw out everything and just say, well, I know what I like and what I've always imagined I would like, and just let's bring it all together.
That must be so daunting, though. So at what point did you kind of decide it went from just, kind of BSing the idea around to, holy crap, we're going to do this thing? I mean, was that kind of from the beginning, just wake up one day and like, damn it, we're going to make a game? Or is it more like, I don't know, is this even a good idea? How did you start sort of socializing it with your friends and the people who eventually became your partners? How did you get that even started?
I want to drill down actually into a more specific question.
Yeah.
Okay.
When was the moment that this, like, what was the forum in which, like, the first seeds of, hey, maybe we want to make a game actually occurred?
Well, I think the driving force was really my partner Jim Lego Burner, because he decided that he was willing to do the real hard work, in my opinion, which was get all the processes done of, finding people to and paying them when necessary to create artwork and figuring out how the heck do you sculpt, figuring out ways to get the money to create the models you need to make, and in our case we're talking about some pretty awesome stuff. So it's not a case of just hiring some dude who says he can sculpt down the street.
Right.
So once he said, I'm willing to sort of tackle these challenges, he did initially ask me, like, do you how much of a role do you really want to do in this company? And I thought about it for a long time. Do I want to like try to oversee the fiction and all this stuff? And it came down to, it was like, I'm going to get so burnt out. I think the best policy for me is just stick to what I know best, which is just go for the rules. And so that's, I said that, it's like, okay, this is the role that I want to take. And it was like, okay, go for it. And then once I said, like, I'm going to do that, the reality sits in, like, oh my gosh, I actually have to make this happen.
Right.
Because it's easy to say, like, I don't like this about these rules, I don't like this about these rules, I like this. But then when you actually have to, like, start from the beginning to the end and make something work, it's like a whole different level of insanity. And I know at some points I'm like, this is crazy, this is going to fail, and everybody's going to say that what I did was horrible and it's going to be a terrible job. But at the same time, if I don't do this, this is, how many opportunities do you get to have somebody say, I'm going to do the hard part of, getting a company going and getting the models made and all these things, and all you have to do is write the rules. It's not going to happen ever again. So I would be a fool to not go for that.
So that's cool.
So did you bring it up to Lego Burner? Were you like, hey, I've been thinking, or was this something that percolated, sort of like parallel evolution, and you were both sort of thinking the same thing?
Well, he thought that there was sort of we kind of both said there's a niche in the market for a sci-fi game that's that's above skirmish but below army scale, and it's not being filled by anybody because, frankly, everybody's afraid of Games Workshop, but no one seems to have noticed that Games Workshop has completely moved their game off of that scale, and they don't even have, anything in that realm anymore. So it's like there's this gap that nobody's playing, and we want that. We want to play that game, and that game's not really available. So that was kind of the seed, and then once that seed is planted, everything just sort of like fills in around it.
Right. Gotcha. Cool.
Very cool. So, so that is awesome. That is amazing too, that he was there, kind of in parallel with you thinking about that, and then had has the connections and the resources to find the talent you need. So it sounds like, and we talked about
3.5 years is a long time. So
yeah. Well, let me ask you about that. So you've been doing
we were going out to conventions and just talking to people behind the scenes and stuff like that. And making it happen. And we started this process before there was Kickstarter, and actually seeing Kickstarter hit was, at first it was like, oh, this is awesome, because now we're going to be able to use Kickstarter to potentially do this. And then it was like, oh my God, look at how many games are coming out. It's like every game that came out, we thought we'd be done, a year earlier, but it's just like to make the things that we're making and the quality that we wanted it takes time.
Yeah, let me ask you about that. So you've been working this a long time, and you said 3.5 years, and you had planned, you're sort of starting the process kind of predated Kickstarter, or at least before Kickstarter became really well known. So how was your original plan not to use Kickstarter at all? You're really working this through sort of the more traditional way games got launched?
Yeah, absolutely. We started it before we knew that it was in existence. So the plan was to go for something more traditional. But and honestly, what we have, we could launch without Kickstarter right now. But Kickstarter, what it allows you to is at least in our case, is the product that we're going to launch for Kickstarter can either be not that great, or we can pile a bunch more stuff into it.
Right.
So what Kickstarter allows us to do is two things. It allows us to make the product that we're going to release way better than it would have been, and it also sets us up for the future for, hopefully, newer other factions and other stuff down the road. So
yeah, sounds awesome. I think that's great. So the timing really, I guess, do you feel like the timing was very fortuitous? Do you think it all came together, or do you feel like Kickstarter put a pressure on you that you tried to accelerate your time frame?
No, I mean, there was no time frame acceleration at all. It's done when it's done, and it's been excruciating because there have been so many. Every Kickstarter launch that comes out that is anywhere close to the same genre, you sort of have this twinge of fear, and that they are sort of stepping on the coolness of what you're created. Like, you hope that what you've created is a unique story and a unique models, and everyone's going to love it. But every time a new thing comes out, you're like, well, is this going to be the thing that takes off and sort of like makes everyone think that we're copying them now?
Right. Right.
So it was just kind of, I would say, a little fearful more than anything.
Yeah, well, I can imagine too. It's giving all the time and effort you put in. As you've been going through the process, what were some of the things that were sort of harder than you expected? Like, what were some of the things you thought would be easy and ended up being hard, and then vice versa?
Well, I mean, the models, the sculpting and the models. That's really it. I mean, there's two things, and I think there's no surprise to anybody. Is artwork. It's artwork is either it's expensive and it's hard to find good artists. I mean, you can find them, but they're not always available. So, you have to generate art, a lot of great art, and you have to make models. And in our case, we're not just making regular models. We are going for, something a little special. So that meant, a process that takes a lot longer than I think anyone realizes that's not done it before. It's shocking about how long. I mean, everyone talks about the cost of working. We're working in plastic, so everyone is always talks about the cost, and the cost is incredibly high. But it's the time. It takes so many iterations to get the models to the right point and get them cut properly for the sprue to be on the frame. That is, it's just crazy how long it takes. Wow. I never would have known.
Yeah. Was there anything that was easier than you expected? Was there anything you're like bracing yourself to be really, really challenging? Oh, well, that wasn't so bad. Anything like that?
No. I can't think of it.
It's all harder than you thought. Just when kids just know that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that Jim, he might have some stuff, although he probably has a lot more stuff that was harder than he thought. But, I think that he deals with a lot of the stuff. I mean, also, what's really strange is in our situation, we are creating this company and this game without really being in the same room or in the same country in a lot of cases.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So that definitely has created its own level of challenges. And I should say that one of the reasons when we first kicked off this idea of making a game, the fact that we have Dakka and we have this community, is another thing that puts us in an advantageous position to launch a game that a lot of other games don't have. We have sort of a platform already built in that we can say, hey, we've got a game and check it out. And we've got people that'll listen. That's a good
question. That's a good segue to, I wanted to ask you something was, how impactful was having access to the Dakka community on the various, did you keep it from Dakka? Were you able to leverage the community to get extra resources? I mean, people, were you able to do anything with that, or is that more of a later as you launch kind of a idea?
We have kept it very secret for very long. And we used, secret forums on Dakka for the people that were involved in the company as a way to help develop stuff. And we certainly pulled from a lot of, moderators and stuff like that, the people that are sort of like in the, that already know a lot of stuff anyway. So we kind of had a sort of a core test group of people to talk to about just concepts and ideas. And then people would join the project. We get, fiction writers and stuff like that, and they would sign up and start joining. So we sort of like had a collaborative effort there going on Dakka behind the scenes. And more recently, just in the, I'd say the last year or so, we started pulling a few people in to start doing some play testing via that way. But I'll say one thing about play testing, and I hopefully this is going to change. But up to this point, the play testing has actually been kind of a struggle. I mean, we get people to sign NDAs and stuff like that. But one of the things that's kind of funny is when you try to ask somebody to play test your game, people are pretty much okay with signing up to play test one game or a couple games. But I think there's a thing until you see the models and the artwork and all that stuff, it doesn't really feel like an actual game. It just feels like some guy's rules.
Right.
And everybody has those guys. And it's like, well, why am I going to play your rules when I don't know if I'm ever actually going to be playing this game?
Right.
And so much of, you can only tell people, like, it's going to be great, it's going to be awesome, the models are going to be great. And, until they actually see it, I think they don't believe it. So the play testing has actually been really difficult because when you're going out and trying to find people to play test, I think there's a play test gene in some people.
Right.
And you can't just say, hey, will you play test this game? Because most people just really don't have it in them to play more than one or two games of, a homebrew rule set without actual models. So I'm really excited to finally go public at some point, and then you're going to get that sort of that playtest gene. All the people that have the playtest gene are going to bubble to the surface and be like, ooh, I want to playtest. And these are the people that actually really love playtesting. And so I'm excited to get sort of like the next level of playtesting going once we launch the Kickstarter, and we can sort of get some more people signed up to do some playtesting.
Yeah, I think you'll get that from the Dakka community once they realize, this is the one coming from Dakka. I want to try this out at least once. See what it's like.
I think it's going to be a perfect storm.
Yeah.
I hope so.
So I wanted to ask you a bit about, I know Lego Burn did a lot of the business stuff and everything else, but you've been developing these rules. And so I wanted to ask you a bit about, not the specifics, I know we're going to save this for later, but just in general, I got to ask you about the rule book itself. So do you have a vision of the rule book? Like, are you thinking... is it going to be like, is there a certain style you're thinking about with is it going to be like mostly centered on painting and background material, a little bit of rules or lots of rules, or have you thought about that much yet?
Well, my job is just to write the rules, and then I think the core is to have me write the rules and then sort of fill in the rest. But really, those are, there's a lot. When it comes to the rule book, that actually has a lot to do with like the Kickstarter and stuff like that.
Okay, fair.
Because the better the Kickstarter does, the more we can afford. I believe the more pages we can afford to have in the rule book. But we will be totally committed to publishing rules updates for free on PDFs and stuff like that. So, we're sort of torn right now of I have sort of like more rules written for down the road, theoretically, we'll talk more about in the show, but the idea of bigger stuff like vehicles or crazy big stuff like that, do you want to put that stuff in the rule book, immediately, even if, who knows when those things will show up? Do you want to have because some people get scared away by a lot of pages in a rule book.
Right. Or they get upset with you because the rule book you published last year has all those references to flyers, and I still haven't seen those in a year and a half.
Exactly.
Right.
So there's sort of you can do it two ways. You can put that in there, and then you sort of have that expectation, and you have bigger rules, or you can leave it out, but then you essentially have to be committed to, publishing a second edition down the road, and now people aren't happy with that. So, So there's no one right way to do it. The only thing I know for a fact is, we will make every effort to obviously produce the rules for free alongside wherever we can, so people never feel like they're being bilked for their money.
Right.
We will have, some sort of reference materials included.
Yep.
The way that we are going to have, the Army list built is going to definitely most likely be something that's manageable outside of the rule book. Mm-hmm. So something that we can update, most likely cards.
Yep.
Again, it comes down to the Kickstarter and stuff like that. So, if you played like Wild West Exodus or something, just being able to reissue cards to change stuff, it's kind of in that same vein.
So let me ask you this. So how did your experience as being sort of the main FAQ guru for Tournament 40K for so many years, how did that knowledge of how you had to maintain that FAQ and all the things you did over the years to make that workable, how did that inform the rule set you came up with this game and your designing of the rules in terms of how you looked at it?
Well, I think there's no question that I approach it from, the competitive balance standpoint first, and then say from there, once you, like you always say, go for that first, and then from there you can put on the narrative elements, and that's definitely the way that I've approached it. I think with the way that I have missions designed, it's going to be a really interesting ability to create new missions and even create narrative missions. I think without giving anything too much away, we're going to have cards for the mission. And in a competitive mission, you're going to be, having one card for the mission, and both people are sharing the same mission card essentially. But in a narrative game, we're going to have, one card for the attacker, one card for the defender, so they can have essentially different, objectives than the attacker does. And the cool part is you could theoretically, in campaigns, you could have, you can form a deck. So like for a tournament, you could say, we're going to use these cards and then shuffle them in the deck. And, well, not a tournament really, but, you could shuffle the cards together that you like and then draw your mission randomly. And in a campaign, you could even have a situation where the attackers have one set of cards, a deck of cards, and the defenders have a different set, and you can potentially draw sort of like different opposed missions.
Cool. That sounds really neat. Did you, so you mentioned that idea that you kind of went for the sort of the clean, sort of minimize rule debates kind of approach to it, as opposed to really, and then later adding in the background, kind of making sure the background material fits it. Is that kind of the approach?
Yeah. How much like sort of fluff to put into the rules itself is always a good question too, because again, that adds to the page count, and nobody looks at like, well, this has a lot of, well, I guess some people say it's easy to read, but a lot of people complain about the rules length more than anything else. So, I think hopefully, fingers crossed, people will think that it's makes sense and is good. I've taken every pain to try to think of every possible, that's where my background does come into play. Right. I sit there and agonize over like the wording and what this means, and how I imagine people having
twisting
arguments,
right.
Forum arguments about the rules. Right. It keeps me awake at night. So
how is this going to look? And you make the call, right?
Correct. So yeah, that's and I already know the stuff that's going to. I already know stuff's going to have to be FAQ'd. It's just
right. Mm-hmm. So now you have a new appreciation for being the opposite end of the FAQ guy. Have you mentioned you guys were thinking of obviously doing PDFs? I mean, what's your preference? Not so much how you guys are actually handling the situation this time, but what's your preference? Do you prefer FAQs that then addendum the rules, or do you prefer updated whole copies of the rule book in some kind of digital format that you can just?
Well, I mean, there's no right answer, I guess. Right. Because they both have positives and negatives. Mm-hmm. When you update the rule book, some people love that, and some people are angry that their rule book is no longer current. So, it's going to be, and there's also obviously financial factors involved as well. I mean, yeah, you can put out a PDF, but still got to pay someone to format that potentially and stuff like that. So I can't say for certain what we're going to do. I just know that I will try my best to make it that we don't have to do as much as we can. But yeah, I don't know exactly what path we'll take, but it will be obviously, anytime you're a small company, you have a lot more leeway than sort of a Games Workshop where you don't have to translate everything into 8 languages and stuff. So if there are problems, they will be FAQ'd and or errated as necessary.
Very cool.
I wouldn't focus too much on that at this point.
Yeah,
though.
no, I think you're going to be fine.
Yeah. Hopefully there will be none. There will be none at all.
Right.
There you go. So you could do that.
So, John, thanks so much. Craig,
focus on the positive, though.
Craig,
You've got this amazing thing that these guys who are listening to us right now have to wait a couple weeks to hear about.
Yes.
And then we'll all be as excited as Russ and I are.
Right. Because we already know some things because we got to talk to John about it. So, so John, it's launching in a couple more weeks. So by the time it'll be later this month, right? So this Lost Chapter is going up in April. And then, of course, the main episode along with will come out right about the time the Kickstarter starts. And you're going to be doing this whole thing. Are you excited about going to Salute? Because I think that's where you guys are going to announce this, right?
Yes, the timing isn't locked down exactly, but we're probably going to do. There might be a slight public unveiling on Dakka at some point, but the date's not set yet. And then there will be a Kickstarter that will be running concurrently with me being at Salute, along with some of the other team members, to sort of show off the game. So if you are a UK listener and you are going to Salute, then make sure you check us out. We'll have a booth, and our company name is Spiral Arm Games.
Very cool.
I don't know the booth number. We do have a booth number, but I don't know it. But look for Spiral Arm Games.
I guarantee you some of the people listening to this are going to Salute.
Yeah, that's great. I wish I was going to Salute, Craig. See, this is
me too.
We got to build a game just so I can go to Salute. I think this is
my first Salute, so come by and say hi.
It's probably cheaper and easier, Russ, just to pay for the airfare and go as a spectator.
Than not building my own game? You think?
And not build your own game.
Okay, fair enough.
I think you should build your own game. That sounds like a cool idea.
That sounds like a lot of work. So let me ask
it only took you how many years?
Right. So
3.5. But Russ has a big head, so he
does.
He can think it all. He can fit it all in.
So let me ask you, John, if you knew 3.5 years ago what you knew today, would you do it all again?
Yes.
Oh,
yes, I would.
What would you do differently if you knew it all 3.5 years ago?
I don't know. I don't know if there's anything I could change. I think you got to ask me that question again after it's released.
That's fair.
Because right now I still don't know anything. Like I was at Adepticon this year, and I was watching like guys in the hallway trying to get people to try out their game, their homebrew game, and I'm just thinking to myself, you have no idea like how well people are going to like it. Like right. I think we've got a good package overall, but I'm sure that guy thinks that too. And am I going to be a guy in a hallway begging people to come over, or am I going to have people wanting to play the game? It's like
I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's very tense.
That guy got almost all my friends to buy a giant starter set, a bunch of starter boxes. So.
Cool, because that game looked cool. So
there you go. So,
I'm glad.
So it's I think you could do the same.
I can be a guy in a hall.
You could be a guy in a hall.
No, you can get my friends to buy spend a bunch of money.
Right. Yes, we'll be there.
But hey, if that's your aspiration, John,
that's all I want.
By all means, stake out that carpet.
I just want your friend's money. That's my only goal.
See, at least you have a targeted goal, John. I like it.
Yeah. Well, John, can we isolate that and make that his front of the show clip? I just want your friend's money.
I just want your friend's money. There it is. Clip.
Thanks,
John. Thank you so much for joining us here in Dunkin' Donuts today. We look forward to having you on in the main show here in about a week or so to hear more about
when all of the potential gets revealed.
Right.
Exactly. Yes. Exciting.
Very cool.
Thanks for purchasing a D6G Lost Chapter. Supporting the show helps it grow.